Greetings, I'm Demonac. And I thought today I'd just try and tell one of my old D&D stories with as little editing and as little scripting as possible. I just have a point form list of things to make sure I don't forget. So I'm going to tell you about the time that I was one of the characters running through a pre-made adventure module called Lord of the Iron Fortress. So this is a module for level 15 characters. It actually is part of a whole set of modules. You could check them out. They're pretty interesting. They form sort of a campaign that assumes that you maybe have one or two little side adventures in between them, but mostly it follows your characters as they level up through this whole series. And this was the level 15 one. We were just treating it as a one-off module. We made a bunch of characters from scratch. And one thing we all found hilarious about this module was it comes with a bunch of pre-made characters in the back that you could use to go through the module. And we look at them and laughed our asses off because they were horrid. You could try running through the module with them, but there are at least 5 or 6 places where the pre-made party in the back should just be obliterated like victims of a Gygax adventure. Whereas a party of well-built like characters that are ready for hard stuff at level 15 has a chance. You know, there are some pretty hard parts, but there are reasonable ways to get through it, so it's doable. With the party in the back, not doable. For one thing, they didn't seem to understand saving throws. When you get to level 15 in D&D, if not sooner, you're high enough level that a lot of really bad things can happen to you, and you don't want to die from some sudden horrible thing. So as you get into the teens in your character level, it becomes incumbent upon you to try and become protected from as many things as you can. In fact, my principle is usually I want to be immune to as many things as humanly or elfly, magically possible, given the budget I have for magic items. And starting level 15 characters from scratch with standard D&D character wealth, you have a lot of money to work with, especially since I was playing an arcane caster for the party. As you know, arcane casters, they don't have as many mandatory items as melee guys, you know, tanks and stuff like that. Tanks, you have to have all of your armor class and all your physical defenses and stuff like that, and you have to spend all this money on a fancy, expensive weapon. Weapons are super expensive, like good ones. So cutting out the weapon right there saves you so much money that you can use on being immune to things. Being immune to things is awesome. So just by comparison with the characters in the back of the book compared to our party, each of our characters' lowest saving throw was pretty similar to the highest saving throw of the corresponding character in the pre-made party. It's a really bad sign, because the enemy in some encounter is going to hit you with DC 17 or DC 18 saving throws. You roll a d20, you need a 17 or an 18 or whatever the number is to pass a save. Some of these are going to be save or die, or the equivalent, like something that paralyzes you, and then since you're paralyzed, they're just going to kill you, because you can't defend yourself. So our characters would have saving throws like ranging from plus 12 to plus 17 or something like that. It's a DC 18 saving throw. I have plus 17 to my save. Look, I succeeded! Hooray! Whereas in their party would have characters, some of them would have like plus 8, plus 9. That means every time you get hit with a DC 17 or 18 save, that's like a 50% chance that you're going to fail. And some of these are incredibly fatal, or if not directly fatal, really bad. Like, you'd much rather take half of 70 damage than all of 70 damage, especially if it could happen multiple times in the same encounter. It's really important to save. But anyway, I was making an arcane caster that fit well in the party that we had. I'm sorry to the other people who were involved in this game, because my memories are kind of self-centered in this particular case. I don't remember the rest of the party too well at all. I think the guy who usually plays fighters played a fighter, possibly a dwarf fighter, because he usually played dwarf fighters. And we have another guy that usually plays melee stuff, and then Somebody must have been a cleric, because otherwise we wouldn't have gotten very far. So anyway, I'm making the arcane caster, and I'm looking at level 15 is a good level for building a character, because a lot of prestige classes you can get into starting after level 5. And that means at level 15, if it's a 10-level prestige class, you could have all 10 levels of that class. A lot of prestige classes have a capstone ability, like some really good power that they get at the last level of the class. So I'm looking through and like digging up, so what would be a really good class here? And I'm like, I could be an elementalist wizard, like elemental savant. Is actually the name of it. This was 3.0 edition, I should mention, not 3.5. In 3.5 edition, Elemental Savant, I don't like them so much. They lose multiple levels of spell casting, which is really bad. You don't want to. If you're a pure caster, you do not want to lose more than about 1 level of spell casting ability, unless you're getting something insanely amazing out of it. Well, the 3.0 edition Elemental Savant loses exactly 1 level of spellcasting ability and gets something pretty insanely amazing out of it. So, like, I'm going to do that. I won't start with 8th level spells, but no, I'll get them when I level during the adventure. That would be nice. So, mostly, I'm a guy who casts spells, and I get some, like, I don't know, some kind of bonuses based on elemental stuff. Make my save DCs a little bit higher when casting spells of my element. Don't even really care. Why do I care about the class? Because the 10th level in the class, I don't gain a spellcasting level. Instead, I become an elemental, basically. So my wizard has used his knowledge of elemental junk to transform his body permanently into something very similar to a medium elemental of the type of his choice, except that, unlike medium elementals, I'm super intelligent and have 15th level or 14th level arcane spellcasting. Makes a big difference. So you can choose all the different element types, and you get immunity to the damage type that corresponds with your element too. So fire elemental guy is immune to fire, or if your earth elemental guy is immune to acid. But obviously I picked air elemental as my type. So my guy gets a bunch of the qualities of an air elemental, which is pretty good stuff. So I'm immune to electricity, because that's lightning is the element tied to air, damage-wise. And I get some other crappy powers too, like air mastery, where like if I'm flying and I'm attacked by someone who's flying, they get -1 to hit and damage against me. Like, ooh, -1 to hit and damage. Or even less relevant, because I'm a spellcaster, if I'm flying and my target is flying, I get +1 to hit and damage, which so don't care. But what's really awesome about the Air Elemental Savant is I get perfect flight. I have flight with perfect maneuverability. I can hover, I can fly backwards, I can just whatever the heck I want. And I get that with speed 100, which is fast. Like, average speed for a thing in D&D is 30. Most people move at a speed of 30. Well, with the speed of 100, if I'm up against an enemy that is trying to melee attack me, and it has a fly speed of 40, which is, a little above average, I can move 100 feet back and zap him with a spell, and he can double move, like do a charge attack or something, and he still can't catch up to me, because I move that much faster. So he could spend his entire turn and lower his defenses to run at full speed and get close to me, and then on my turn, I'm just going to fly another 100 feet away and zap him again. So, awesome. But the other reason I want to go with this class is because becoming an elemental means I'm immune to all kinds of stuff. I love to be immune. So not only am I getting my class-based immunity to electricity, but I'm immune to critical hits, which is huge, because when you're immune to critical hit, I don't care about the actual being immune to critical hits all that much, because in my eyes, critical hits don't come up too often. It's not as big a deal. But when you're immune to critical hits, like really immune, you gain immunity to all kinds of way more important things as just like a side effect. So because you're immune to critical hits, it's basically, in my guy's case, his body is a semi-substantial thing made of air elemental stuff. He has no vital organs anymore. He is just like a magical entity, basically. So this means he's immune to sneak attack. Sneak attack is really bad. You don't want to be a spellcaster and have an enemy sneak up behind you and ambush you for plus 10d6 damage. That sucks. But it's okay, because I'm immune to sneak attack. And there are a bunch of other things that count as precision damage. I'm immune to them too. Being an elemental also means I'm immune to ability damage, which is awesome. Ability damage is all kinds of bad stuff. I mean, I'm immune to poison, which usually does ability damage, but I'm immune to poison separately from ability damage anyhow, just in case. I think an elemental immune to paralysis. All kinds of great immunities. Plus, another thing I forgot about the flight, because I'm flying as an elemental, like my guy is basically made of the same, he's the elemental substance of air. His flight is an extraordinary ability, which if you're getting into technical D&D stuff, there are different classes of ability, right? There's an ability can be extraordinary, which is something you just innately do, like a rogue's evasion ability. That's from a skill. That's not like some magical thing. That's innate. Well, my flight is just like an innate thing. It's just part of the form of my creature type, basically. So that means that it can't be dispelled, it can't be taken away or anything. Then you have supernatural effects, which are somewhat magical, but are still a lot harder to get rid of than actual magic spells. And then magical abilities, like spell-like things and stuff, they're usually the easiest to get around, dispel, and things like that. But extraordinary flight is awesome because it means that even in like an anti-magic sphere, I can still fly. You actually get into arguments about whether or not I would fall if I fall unconscious. We're thinking probably yes, but it's not really that certain. Anyway, it shouldn't happen because I'm an elemental. I shouldn't be unconscious at any point. Awesome. So I'm all set with my guy. I get this, and I have a bunch of buff spells that I cast all the time anyway, because I don't have to waste it. Normally I would spend a high-level spell on overland flight so I can fly all the time. I don't need that. I'm faster than that, and it can't be dispelled. I'm awesome. So I'm spending one of my highest level castings on energy immunity, just making myself immune to fire, because this Iron Fortress thing, when we got the plot set up, it has to do with a forge, extra planar, like crazy forge, and someone's kidnapping the souls of the best dwarven smiths and stuff like that. That's basically the backstory. I'm not going to go into it. If you're really interested, you can pick up the module and play it. It was pretty cool, although it is 3.0, so maybe a little bit outdated now. But anyway, forge, fire. I thought I want to be immune to fire all the time. So I was spending a casting every day on elemental immunity, or whatever, energy immunity. That's the name of the spell. I pick an energy type. I'm immune to that energy type for 24 hours. Awesome as well. So now I'm immune to electricity and fire. This is good. So we go out there and we fight some stuff. You know, I blast things with chain lightning a lot. The 3.0 edition Elemental Savant has bonuses when he's using lightning spells, and when he casts any spell that does elemental damage, he can change it, or I guess at the time of memorization, he can memorize it as a lightning version of that spell. So I could memorize Fireball, or I could, without spending anything extra, memorize that as a lightning Fireball. So presumably a lightning ball. The 3.5 edition Elemental Savant, the new version of him, way different. He can change all his stuff to his element type for free. So my guy, the equivalent of my guy, could still cast Lightning Ball. But he's actually not allowed to cast any spells that do a different element type. So he would not be able to memorize normal Fireball. All his Fireballs would be Lightning Fireballs. And all his Scorching Rays would be Lightning Scorching Rays. And you know what? It really, really sucks if he runs into something that's resistant or immune to lightning. So that's really bad. I did not have that problem with the 3.0 edition Elemental Savant. He was really good. He didn't lose much, and he got awesome stuff for it. So we find out in the course of our adventuring, we have to go to a plane called Acheron. It's like a lawful neutral, lawful evil plane, and the planes are always weird. They're like infinite in size and stuff like that. This particular plane is full of worlds that aren't like worlds. They're just cubes of varying sizes. Some of them might be just like, 100 meters to a side on the cubes, and some of these cubes are like massive, like Each side is the size of a continent, and they're floating through this void. Occasionally they collide, and it's crazy, crazy big. You do not want to be on the sides of these giant metal cubes when they collide. It would have a really negative impact on you. So we're going through there, and we fight a bunch of stuff, and we're getting sort of worn down. Like, we need to rest and regain spells and heal up and all that. And we get stuck on this stupid cube where the side that we're on, it's one of those, it's like Valhalla, right? There's sort of perpetual battles. Every day all the combatants are raised up again, like their spirits, and they get to fight again. But right now everyone seems to be dead, and so we're wandering through this battlefield just trying to find a place to rest. And we get ambushed by all these shadows. Shadows are really low level compared to us. We're level 15, and those are like, I don't know what, CR, like 3, or they're not very powerful enemies, but there are buttloads of them. And they are one of those rare things that is still potentially dangerous to much higher level characters, because one, they do touch attacks, so they're ignoring most of your armor class for most people. And two, their damage, they do a little damage, like a D4 or something. It's really trivial physical damage that they do. But every time they hit you, they drain some of your strength, and that strength damage really adds up, especially if you're a spellcaster and strength is your dump stat. So my strength would be like 6 or 8 or something like that. And we were all pretty beat up, and there were tons of these things. I AoE'd some of them, but then I was mostly out of spells. I don't remember how it went, but it was really bad. We were fighting and fighting, and I was getting hit so much because I was a 15th level character, and one of the other decisions you make when you get into those high levels and you have all this money to spend on gear and you want to be resistant or immune to things, armor class, as far as I'm concerned, from a min-maxing point of view, when you reach when your level gets into the teens, armor class is binary. You either spend a ton of money trying to get your armor class as high as possible, or don't bother. That if you're not going to spend a ton of money maxing out your armor class at that point, it's really just not of value to you. So, for example, if I could get my armor class up to 30 at level 15, that would be pretty decent. Things would miss me often enough to make that a worthwhile investment, probably. But spending half as much money and getting my armor class up to 25 is almost pointless, because a lot of things are going to be attacking at like plus 17 to hit. Some of the things we run into are going to be hitting at like plus 22, plus 23, plus 24. If we're running into something really dangerous, like elementals, dragons, and stuff like that, why spend a bunch of money that is barely going to give them any miss chance whatsoever? So I spent like no money on my armor class, which is not uncommon, especially when I'm going arcane caster or something. If I was going to be like a melee guy, I probably would have chosen to spend the money on armor class, because you know you're going to be up there getting attacked all the time. But I'm an arcane caster. I know I could fly away from danger a lot of time. Plus, I have all these great defensive spells. Cast Greater Blinking. I'm a big fan of Greater Blinking. It gives me a 50% miss chance. It has no negative effects for me. That's good stuff. And I would usually spend the first round of any battle, at least one round, sometimes two, casting like Mirror Image and other major powerful defensive buffs on myself before I start unloading on the enemies, because I want to not die. As a consequence of this, my armor class is really bad, and I didn't have any good defense buffs left, or maybe I had one and I decided, well, I'm not going to use it, they're just shadows. But they were zapping me left and right, getting strength drained all over the place. The rest of the party's tied up fighting for their lives and stuff like that. I'm getting hit so much, and the GM's like cackling and like, I got you now, you have 8 strength. And I have all the strength drain. I can finally kill you. He really wanted to kill me for various reasons, some of which were deserved in the sense of like in-game stuff that maybe deserves some kind of in-game punishment. But his euphoria was short-lived, because I knew that I'm like, I'm an elemental. You can't drain my strength. I'm immune to ability damage. So I got zapped by so many of these shadows that it was getting to the point I was close to dying from actual physical damage that they were doing, like 1d4 plus 1 at a time. With their crappy piddly attacks. I got beat up so much with my horrible armor class. By the time we wiped them out, GM figured that I must have taken 30 strength damage if I could take strength damage, which would have been way into the negatives. Like, I would have been paralyzed and dead and turned into a shadow myself ages ago. But no, I get through that. And he's like fuming, like, so we're getting tired of this stupid place, and we really need to rest. So we're like, I'm gonna cast Rope Trick. It's this really low level spell, and it's kind of silly looking. Like you open up an extra dimensional portal in the sky, and it has like a rope drop down out of it. It's like that rope climbing trick that, I don't know, magicians used to do in India like 1,000 years ago, or probably 100 years ago. But anyway, the D&D version of this, it's really awesome. You're creating an extra dimensional portal. You just like climb up there, and then you pull up the rope, and your portal is invisible from the outside. So you're like, yeah, safe hiding place for only a 2nd level spell. And Jim's like, you sure you want to do that? It's only a 2nd level spell, and you're in like high level zone in MMO terms. Like, this is where the dangerous stuff lives. You can't just like rely on a 2nd level spell to make you immune to all the glorious challenges that my module has put between you and the ability to rest. But we didn't see why it was such a drawback anyway. Like, what the heck's going to happen? We're in an extra dimensional thing. If something comes along, it's not going to be any worse than when we were down here. Jim felt differently. So during the night, as we're resting and trying to regain spells, someone who has apparently used divination spells to find us, and they're like, oh, those adventurers are getting too close to my iron fortress, and so I will smite them in one blow by somehow gating in some really huge fire elementals into this really tiny extra-dimensional space that you guys are all cramped in. And you're going to get chain fire AoE'd till you die. And the elementals come in and they start beating on us, and GM's like, I'm going to flatten you this time, Demonac. And I'm like, I'm immune to fire. There's that spell I cast every day that makes me immune to one element. I chose fire for a reason. Fire's a good one. He's like, oh, why did I have to choose fire elementals? But he thought the AoE would be really good, hitting us all inside the party and that. So the fire elementals beat on us, and they do hurt still, but they hurt way, way, way less when you're immune to like 3/4 of the damage. And our melee guys these guys know how to make hand-to-hand, like, smashing characters. And they smash the elementals without great difficulty, even though we were pretty beat up. I think we'd had some healing left after the shadows. So we end up getting through that, and we said, okay, we're not going to do the rope trick again, but we somehow managed to get rested up. And we go and keep going about the module. There's all kinds of stuff I'm not going into, because A, I don't remember it all, and even if I did, I don't want to spoil it all. Just the fun parts for me. Parts that I like and remember fondly. So we're getting closer to finding this mythical iron fortress that we're looking for and all the crazy bad stuff that's in there. We run afoul of some dragons. We're like flying over this area, and from a cave down below, this blue dragon, like a fairly significant sized blue dragon, at least adult, I don't remember the size category, but big enough to be dangerous to us, flies out of there and starts like blasting us with lightning. And I'm immune to lightning, by the way. It's handy. And Jim's like, oh, why did it have to be blue dragons? But it was. So it flies up, and we start like beating on it as we do, and I'm not blasting it with lightning, but because I'm a 3.0 elemental Savant, I have like I've memorized like, I don't know, like some acid spell. I've got stuff that's not lightning that I can use on the stupid lightning dragons. Blasting him with stuff, and we got him beat down and just about dead, and then 2 more dragons fly out from the same cave. See, they're a family. There's like Mama Dragon and Papa Dragon and Junior, who is still not a baby dragon. So the first one flew up, kind of sacrificing him or herself to delay us, hopefully kill us, but mostly delay us, while the other one sat down there casting buffs. They're like buff, 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 making themselves stronger so they could come out and totally kick our asses, even though one of them is actually noticeably smaller. We finished out the first one, and this turned into a really rough fight, as you can imagine. That's a lot more dragons than we're used to fighting, especially when some of them have had like 3 rounds to buff themselves. It's ugly. So the big buff one is like coming after me. I think we dispelled them or something, because usually they don't have the greatest caster level. I could be wrong about that. But it's coming after me, and once again, I've been like taking a lot of hits, and it's starting to look really bad. It gets up there and somehow gets next to me to think it got close enough to full attack me, which is really not supposed to happen. I have this flight speed of 100 just to avoid this ever getting full attacked thing, but dragons fly really fast in a straight line. I don't know how it happened, but it's like beating on me. It's like attack, 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 and I'm like, oh, this is looking really fatal. They're like, oh, counting down the hit points, and it's like, oh, that's going to drop me to -1. No, wait. I'm flying. The dragon is flying. I have the air elemental crap power of air mastery. So it takes -1 to hit against me, which doesn't matter because my armor class is so sad that even the smallest of the dragons would have had a really hard time missing me with any of its attacks. But it also does -1 damage per attack, which left me at a positive integer number of hit points, somewhere around 3. And my party members finish it off, and the dragons fall down, and I survived again. And GM's like, oh, why did they have to be blue dragons? If those were any other kind of dragons, you would have taken so much breath weapon damage. So much atomic breath weapon. But no, I survived again, and we got into a big fight. We know by now that whoever we're going after is divining the crap out of us, watching all our moves, sitting there with a crystal ball or some bullshit. And we've got into a big argument over, well, see, technically the dragon was alive as it was falling. It was just unconscious, right, in negative hit points, like -5 or something like that, right? But then we were fighting hundreds of feet up, so it fell down, and what actually killed it was the falling damage. And we were trying to argue that if they tried to divine what killed my dragons, the answer would be the ground, which was kind of a specious argument, but we had a lot of fun arguing it anyway, because we felt GM had earned it by this point in the adventure, and in every other adventure. So we finished the dragons. Finally, we go through this whole crazy Iron Fortress full of bad stuff. A lot of it is fire-based bad stuff. Even if it wasn't, I gained a level somewhere in there, which meant I had additional castings. I think I made myself immune to some other element as well. Probably acid. I don't like acid. And so we get through this place, and we get to the end and meet the... what is that word? And we meet the titular lord of the Iron Fortress. And I think he had some kind of fairly large demon with him, but probably not a Balor, but probably not. Some kind of large demon or devil with him anyway. And they were starting on the far side of a chasm from us, and he had apparently buffed himself to the gills or something, but we didn't know that. So they're starting on like the far side of a chasm, and I had this spell that I had found before we went into the adventure, and I hadn't actually cast it yet at this point, but this seemed like kind of a good time. That I've maybe been saving this particular spell, and I rolled pretty well in the initiative. Apparently air elemental wizards are pretty fast. So I get to go before the Lord of the Iron Fortress or his big-ass demon buddy, and I cast Odaluk's Dispelling Screen across the chasm. Odaluk's Dispelling Screen is very simply basically a wall of Dispel magic. A wall made of Dispel magic. Conveniently, because it's made of Dispel magic, you can't just dispel it. That would be silly. But it's actually a little bit nastier than that, because you can physically just walk through this wall. This wall does not stop you from passing through. But spells are completely blocked. So it doesn't matter what high-level spells they're packing over there. If the demon was something it could cast, like Firestorm or Meteor Swarm or whatever. I'm immune to fire. But they can't cast spells through the Dispelling Screen. They have to actually move through the screen and then cast spells while they're on the same side that we are. And the demon like flies across and casts some kind of bad spell on us, I'm sure. But he was pissed off because when you pass through the dispelling screen, it dispels you like a targeted dispel magic. Funny how that happens. And the demon had a bunch of buffs on it from a low-level caster, so those all mostly got wiped out, which was already somewhat annoying to GM. But then the Lord of the Iron Fortress goes to fly through, and he was kind of like a multi-class cleric type guy who was very, very reliant on casting loads of buffs. And because he was a multi-class cleric type guy, compared to us, who were like level 15, I was level 15, or by that point 16 pure caster, his caster level is really not that high. The dispelling screen had a solid 50% chance to take off all his buffs, and it dispelled the crap out of him. In fact, he was fortunate that he managed to keep the buff that was giving him flight, because otherwise he actually would have plummeted into the chasm to his own doom, and it would have been really anticlimactic. But from Jim's point of view, it was still really anticlimactic, because by the time he got through the dispelling screen and across the chasm, we just kicked his ass, because he was counting on having all these crazy priest buffs, and they got wiped out. So he was like, he got across, and he was like just some guy with my pet monster over there, and we crushed them, and GM was furious, and like, I can't believe you saved that spell through the entire adventure. That spell was banned forever from then on, pretty much, just like out of spite. And also, it's a pretty powerful spell. It's only a level 4. Banned forever after that. GM has always harbored this like frustration at blaming me as a guy who deliberately saves spells so they can't get banned until it's too late, which... No comment. Oh, I was an ass. Anyway, thanks for watching Tales from some other D&D campaign. We'll see how this comes out with hopefully not too much editing or time wasted in editing, because I hate editing, and we'll hope that it wasn't horrible with my general lack of a script. So I guess I'll see you next time, but until then, if you have any questions or comments, you can post them on the forums, or make a comment below, and hit subscribe on my little custom subscribe button that I always put up here, because I like it that way. And if you're watching this in some kind of viewer that's not on YouTube, drop me a comment and let me know, because if you don't get these little annotations, because I like putting a subscribe button up here, and if you don't like it, then tough. Also subscribe to my Twitter.